My message to the losers: losers, look in the mirror. No? Well, maybe you should. Sorry. Well, that's my feeling. Losers, look in the mirror. For months, Democrats have been saying, how is this even close? And they're right, it wasn't. They could not conceive of a second Trump term, but they should have. When does America ever turn down second? I mean, come on.
The day kicked off like any other episode of The View. The same smug chuckles, the polished one-liners, and the recycled chatter viewers had endured for years. But in a flash, the illusion of calm shattered the second Bill Maher stepped onto the stage. He didn't arrive to flatter the hosts or follow their script. He came to tear the mask straight off the show in front of millions, leaving no doubt about what it had become. From his very first words, the atmosphere flipped upside down. Those self-satisfied grins plastered on the hosts' faces began to crumble as the audience sensed this would be no ordinary conversation. It was going to be explosive. Whoopi Goldberg, usually untouchable in her chair, realized instantly that this was unlike anything she had faced in years. Maher didn't ease into the debate. He dove straight into the fire with precision and force. With bold clarity, he declared that The View had become nothing but an echo chamber disguised as open dialogue, and the crowd gasped at his audacity. It was a direct strike at the very core of the show's identity, and everyone knew it. The tension escalated further when Maher locked eyes with Whoopi and accused her of hiding behind the illusion of open conversation, when in truth it was nothing but a shield to block out dissenting voices.
They won. Now they have reality they have to deal with. We'll see what they do. See if they live up to their word. Trump says he's going to deport 12 million people. How are you going to get 12 million people back into Mexico? And today Trump said, I'm way ahead of you. Why do you think I left so many holes in the wall?
The moment those words left his mouth, the entire studio thickened with tension so sharp it felt like it could cut the air in half. For once, Whoopi had no quick quip to deflect the blow. She tried to laugh it off with her trademark humor, but Maher refused to let her slip away so easily. He leaned in harder, pointing out that the so-called diverse perspectives on the show were nothing more than carefully recycled talking points, all crafted to serve the same agenda. The chuckles in the room collapsed instantly, replaced with a heavy silence and the uneasy sense that history was being made in real time. Then Maher dropped his next bombshell, one that shattered the illusion like glass. He told the panel and everyone watching at home that The View pretends to showcase balance, but in reality, it's the same opinion shouted in 5 different voices. The words struck like lightning, shaking the credibility of the entire show. The audience's reaction was instant. Some roared in applause, while others sat frozen, unsure if they had just seen a career-defining moment or the opening of a televised war. The cameras captured every flinch on Whoopi's face, every nervous twitch from her co-hosts. It was obvious they had never been confronted this bluntly on their own turf. And Maher wasn't done. He went further, reminding everyone that Barbara Walters had built The View as a platform for genuine clashes of opinion. Then, without hesitation, he declared, "What we see now is nothing but a hollow copy of that dream. A place where disagreement is treated like a disease to be silenced, instead of a perspective to be respected."
It just made me think. I'm sure every single member of the Saturday Night Live cast was a Harris supporter. But what if one of them wasn't? What if one of those cast members was for Trump? Would they have felt comfortable saying so? I really don't think so. They would have had to keep it to themselves. That's not a good place for us to be. And I remember when Elon Musk hosted, and this is well before he was a Trumper. This is 3 or 4 years. He was just the richest man in the world. And a number of the cast members on Saturday Night Live, they didn't want to deal with him. And I was thinking, really? You have Elon Musk on your show for a week. You could talk even about this issue that bothers you so much, that he's so rich and lots of people aren't. But no, you don't want to even deal with him. That's what I hate about the left.
The more Maher spoke, the more unsettled the hosts became. He hammered home the brutal truth that free speech means nothing when only one kind of opinion is allowed. He explained that true dialogue can only exist when uncomfortable truths are given the chance to breathe. And suddenly, the audience realized that the very show they were watching was guilty of suffocating that principle. Whoopi made another desperate attempt to steer the discussion toward safer ground, but Maher refused to let go of the spotlight. He was relentless, exposing the hypocrisy of a show that preached morals endlessly while silencing anyone who dared to disagree. Each word sliced through the glossy facade of the program, leaving only raw, uncomfortable truth for everyone to see. The tension had grown so thick that even the cameras seemed hesitant to linger on the panel's uneasy faces. The audience clung to every syllable, waiting for the next blow, and Maher didn't disappoint. He turned directly toward Whoopi and unleashed a line no guest had ever dared to say, "This isn't the view, it's your view." The impact was explosive, detonating across the studio and instantly flooding social media with shockwaves. Gasps echoed through the crowd, the panelists shifted nervously, and Whoopi's glare hardened with outrage, but she was powerless to stop the unraveling of her carefully maintained narrative. Maher pressed forward, declaring that diversity isn't about gender, race, or background, it's about ideas. He accused The View of betraying that truth by stacking its panel with voices that parroted the same ideology. The hypocrisy was ripped wide open, and there was no stuffing it back into the shadows.
Harris would be the first woman president, first black woman president, and first Asian president. But I don't vote for who will be the first. I vote for who will win. And for whatever reason, Harris has never been popular. You can count the number of delegates she won in the 2020 primaries on one hand, as long as that hand has no fingers. Sometimes life isn't fair. It's not fair that she's not popular. She's intelligent and accomplished, and in fact was put in charge of the border. And look at how... Okay, bad example.
Every attempt Whoopi made to push back only seemed to fuel Maher's momentum. His words cut with razor-sharp confidence, while her interruptions sounded more like frantic attempts to shield herself from truths she couldn't control. The crowd could feel it, the panel could feel it, and even Whoopi herself seemed to realize this was a battle she wasn't winning. As the clash grew sharper, Maher shifted his focus beyond the panel and straight to the viewers at home. He asked if anyone had ever seen a conservative voice treated with real respect on The View, or if those guests were immediately painted as villains the moment they opened their mouths. The question pierced the air like ice, because deep down, everyone already knew the answer. On this stage, opposing views weren't debated. They were destroyed. The studio erupted into a mix of cheers and uneasy laughter, as Maher's brutal honesty left no room for denial. For years, The View had wrapped itself in the illusion of fairness, but Maher had torn that illusion to pieces in seconds. Whoopi scrambled one last time, insisting the show welcomes all voices, but her words rang hollow against the weight of his relentless exposure. He struck back instantly, declaring that welcoming someone only to shout them down isn't inclusion, it's performance. The audience erupted, their applause crashing through the studio like a thunderstorm. The more Maher spoke, the more the walls seemed to close in on Whoopi. She had never been cornered so effectively on her own stage. This wasn't just a heated debate. It was an exposure, a revelation, a live dismantling of the very myth that had built the empire of The View.
Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, I hope is still a friend, we can disagree with each other, should not be canceled or put off her show, as much as I totally disagree with her crazy statement. Free speech. She should be there. She shouldn't get a timeout.
Not every single thing has to be for everybody.
Right.
We can have platforms that have stuff on them that not everyone on that platform or who consumes stuff on that platform enjoys. And The View is a particularly weird place to do it.
Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
there is
clearly,
one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
Behind the scenes, producers scrambled in panic, desperate to find a way to cut the tension. But the damage was already done. Bill Maher had dragged the show into territory no one on The View ever wanted to face. For the first time in years, the panel wasn't smirking, wasn't laughing. They sat silent, staring down the raw force of truth that could not be polished away. Then Maher unleashed the knockout blow of the segment. He declared that the greatest threat to free speech in America wasn't from politicians, it was from platforms like The View itself. The audience gasped so loudly it rolled through the studio like crashing waves. The cameras zoomed in on Whoopi's frozen face, unable to laugh, unable to deflect, completely stripped bare in front of millions. Her attempt at quick damage control fell flat. She tried to insist the show had always supported free voices, but Maher came right back, pointing out how every guest with a dissenting view was mocked, shouted down, or conveniently cut off the second the conversation grew uncomfortable. His evidence was undeniable, and the audience knew it. The studio roared with approval as Maher dismantled the illusion piece by piece. He argued that when a platform pretends to represent all voices but silences half the nation, it becomes more dangerous than honest opposition itself. His delivery was electric, his message piercing, and the audience knew they were witnessing a moment destined to be replayed for years. Whoopi's frustration was written all over her face as she weakly insisted the show was about giving women voices. But Maher flipped it instantly, reminding her that silencing women with different views was no better than silencing them all. The gasps that followed rolled like thunder through the studio. This wasn't just a fiery exchange, it was an earthquake shaking the stage itself.
They're going to sometimes have a very different opinion. And the answer is not to make them sit in a corner for 2 weeks. That is insulting. It's so insulting to make a 65-year-old, the person at ABC News said, I've asked her to take time to reflect and learn about the impact of her comments. Reflect. How insulting for someone of her age, who's a sophisticated person.
The whole point of free speech is we don't need free speech when we're right, when everyone agrees with us. We need free speech when we're wrong. We need free speech to make mistakes. We need free speech to say really unpopular things. And one of the reasons I'm always proud to come on this show, and I suspect you feel the same way, Catherine, is this is the only space left on television where people can speak freely and not be terrified, right?
Yes.
Maher was exposing what millions of viewers had long suspected, that The View was never about genuine dialogue, but about controlling the narrative. He pushed harder, declaring that real progress can only happen when every side is heard, not when one side claims the moral high ground while silencing the other. The crowd erupted with applause so thunderous it nearly drowned out the panel's frantic whispers as they scrambled to regain their footing. As the intensity soared, Maher turned directly to the audience and asked, "Don't you deserve better than a show that disguises one opinion as debate?" The cheers exploded instantly, shaking the studio as the hosts sat frozen in disbelief. His words weren't just criticism. They were a mirror, exposing the very flaws the show had worked for years to conceal. This wasn't speculation. It was revelation. The truth blazed too brightly for anyone to ignore. Behind the scenes, producers barked frantic commands into earpieces, cutting to different camera angles in a desperate attempt to contain the damage. But nothing could erase the words already unleashed. The world was watching as Maher drove his message like nails into a coffin. Whoopi's frustration was written in every tense movement, her grip tightening around her mug, her posture stiff, her face unyielding. She tried one more time to spin the conversation back toward unity and respect, but Maher delivered his most devastating line yet. Unity without honesty is nothing but a lie. The audience shot to their feet in thunderous applause, their cheers deafening as the panel sat cornered and crumbling under Maher's relentless assault of truth. Every deflection only exposed them further. Every interruption only proved their desperation. Maher leaned back calmly, confident and unshaken, as the cheers thundered around him, his words sharp, undeniable, and impossible to silence.
The whole point is they didn't vote for him because of racism and misogyny. They voted for him because they felt like, I think the biggest common denominator in this election is people want a good life and ability to provide for their family.
Well,
and whether we agree or not with Donald Trump's plans,
Black people
they thought that he was reflective.
One of the poorest demographics in this country, but they voted for Kamala Harris.
But there was a split, and more of them voted for Donald Trump than had historically. I think that there's such a desire. If you really think the vast majority of this country voted because of racism and misogyny, you're missing it. Most of my family, a lot of my family doesn't have college degrees.
But the stats are the stats.
But that's not, it doesn't say I'm white, I voted for Donald Trump because of racism. That's not what that. What stat are you talking about?
You can't dissect the two.
Yes, you can. There's a lot
Hold on. Calm down.
The very show that branded itself as The View had become the opposite of its name. offering only one narrow lens while silencing every other perspective. Whoopi, visibly rattled, tried desperately to claw back the spotlight, but Maher wasn't done. He reminded the world that real free speech means defending the words you despise, not just the ones you agree with. But the final blow was still to come. Leaning in, his voice lower but even more piercing, Maher thundered with his last hammer strike. The View doesn't empower voices, it buries them. And today, that curtain has been torn down for everyone to see. His words didn't just land, they detonated, echoing through the studio like a final verdict carved in stone. The audience erupted into chaos, a deafening standing ovation unlike anything the show had seen in years. The cheers, the gasps, the wild applause. It was an uproar of approval for the man who had dared to expose The View on its own stage. Whoopi sat frozen in disbelief, her face etched with fury, unable to seize back control of the narrative she had owned for so long. For the first time, she was the one under the microscope, and Maher made certain the spotlight revealed everything she had worked to hide. The segment ended not with laughter, not with applause for the hosts, but with the thunder of the audience rallying behind Maher's explosive words. The glossy facade had shattered, the illusion lay in ruins, and the truth rang louder than any scripted line ever could. Bill Maher hadn't just exposed Whoopi Goldberg, he had exposed the entire empire of The View. And as the cameras faded to black, one fact was undeniable. This wasn't just TV drama, this was history unfolding in real time, right before the eyes of the world.